Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Jen Sorenson, and I am kicking off a new series that I've been wanting to do for a while. Series I am calling Quilt-Tea. I thought about something around like quilts and coffee, but I don't drink coffee. I drink tea. And then I thought Quilt-Tea, Quilty, quilts and tea. All right, I'm gonna stop. But essentially, this is a series where I want to talk to you about some of my quilts. And to me, this is something that I'm really passionate about. You saw on my channel, I've done a series, or not necessarily a series, a video on how to make quilt labels, because I personally feel it's so important to document our quilts, share the stories behind them for those to see what's behind that story, those that we love especially, to know the meaning behind the quilts, the materials used, our inspiration, all of that. So I'm gonna bring to you on a regular basis, hopefully, the stories behind some of my quilts. And I might go back into the archives to some quilts that are not that great, and also talk about some recent ones. And that's what I'm gonna do today. I'm gonna talk to you about this quilt here. I am calling a Liberty of Love, because this was a little bit of a labor of love, and it was a lot of love that went into this with some of my favorite Liberty of London fabrics that I've been collecting for a long time. That's really what inspired this entire quilt, is these Liberty of London fabrics. And I'm gonna bring you closer in a minute and talk about some of them, but that kind of sparked the entire design. Is all of a sudden I was really fascinated with the idea of combining different textures of fabrics. Liberty of London, the lawn fabrics are very soft. They're thin. They have this amazing drape to them. I love them so much. But what would happen if I combined different textures? The Liberty with, in this case, surrounding each of them is a Andover textured solid. And these, we'll take a look at them. They look like a solid from afar, but they have a lot of texture to them. You know, some of the threads are different thicknesses. It just looks really nice. And then the beige that you see here is a chambray, and it's just really soft. 3 different textures. And how could I work with them together, and what would that do to the quilt? That really sparked all of the design and the inspiration. And I wanted something that was going to really highlight these fabrics. And I thought what I would do is take some of these lawns and pair them with a coordinating textured solid. Now at the time, and I should really have looked this up, these were kind of what I was limited to in terms of the solid colors, because they were brand new. I actually started this quilt in 2014. And yes, I just finished putting the binding on in February 2021. So this was a long-standing UFO, and I'll get into why that's the case in a minute. But I started with the textured solids in terms of picking which Liberty fabrics I wanted to use. After I picked the Liberty fabrics to them, I kind of played around with it, and I wanted some different depth and dimension. You'll notice here that some of these, I really think this one in particular and the yellow have 2 different effects going. And even this kind of grayish blue, that these have different effects given the value. The play off of some of the different colors. You know, with this one, I kind of feel like the Liberty in the center, because it's dark, that comes forward and you lose kind of some of that star features to it. This one, the center Liberty is much lighter. So you kind of have a little different dimension to it. You see this center star in a way, and then you see this bigger star. But then with this blue, it kind of all looks the same. You don't get as much as differential. And I wanted to play with that. That was something really important to me, that I was able to get these different values, because that creates this interest in the quilt. Your eye moves around, like this yellow, and it's kind of like a deep navy or black. It's hard to really tell. But there's so much contrast there, and it's so different and bright compared to some of the others that your eye moves around. You know, I think it then goes up sometimes to this light baby blue, which again has this darker background to it, and your eye just moves. Maybe it goes down to this pink or this green, and it just kind of has that interest. Versus if all of them had had something like the effect where you've got the really light, which, you know, some of these do too. This blue one does, the brown especially has a different effect. You know, it kind of creates movement. By playing with value in different ways, I'm able to get that effect. The other thing that I struggled with for a long time was how to quilt this quilt. When I finished the top in 2014, I was brand new to owning a long arm. I had just purchased it and I was not good at machine quilting at that point. But I had this vision. I had sketched it out online, and I think that's a great thing about what I do with paper piecing is I can doodle on the sketch, and I do that. So I had this vision, and I reached out to several long armors, and they all said no because they knew I now had a long arm, and they also weren't sure how these different textures of fabric were going to look. So this quilt sat unfinished for a very long time. Enter a pandemic. I said, you know what? I'm gonna tackle this. And what I did is I pulled out the pattern that I had and I started doodling on it to see what could I do. I'm gonna put my tea down now. And I'll show you right here. I started sketching a little bit, some different ideas. And some of this I did. Mainly what you see in the bright pink is what I ended up doing. Yeah, I did not add in some of the pebbling and some of the other stuff that you see. And what I did is I really wanted to extend the quilting into the background. I wanted to take this kind of pinwheel design and extend it over into the background, into the negative space. But I had this idea from the beginning, when I first sketched this out, to leave some of the bottom corner unquilted with that pattern and just do some diagonal straight lines. And that's what I did. So I used this template, and you can see from the back, I have these two little holes, and I used that as a way. So I did my marking, marked my squares, and then I used these points as a way to kind of mark where certain points would be to then use my ruler, as I did a lot of ruler work on this, as a way to guide and figure out how I would quilt it. So I quilted it on my long arm until I got to about here. And then I had these really long diagonal lines, actually until right here. These long diagonal lines, and I didn't want to have breaks in the actual lines. Because I didn't want to chance them being a little bit off. So I pulled it off my long arm, and it sat for almost a year. Till I finally ended up pulling it off and quilting that on my domestic so that I could have those continuous straight lines. So that's what I did. And then I finished it off because I have no idea where any of this chambray is. I bought a whole bunch more to see if I could match it for the binding. So I faced it. And that's one of the things I love to do. I played around with doing some sort of a scrappy binding, and I laid it all out, and I didn't like the way it looked. So I faced it. And you can see here as the stand shakes. So I faced it, and yes, the backing is all Liberty of London. So why don't I take you in for a little bit of a close-up of this quilt, and we'll talk a little bit more about it so you can see some of those details, and then we'll wrap things up. All right, let's take a look at the quilt, and it's a little bit close up here. And you can see some of the different liberties. There aren't too many repeats in terms of prints. There's a bunch of different styles that you can see that coordinate, I think, well with a lot of the fabrics here. And you can really see how that quilting just extends and you have these different stars that emerge. I showed you that inner star that shows up when I pointed out the pink here, which looks a little more red on screen right now, but it's definitely a bright fuchsia. You've got the star that pops up in between the blocks when you put them together, and then you kind of have this like 4 pointed pinwheel star, whatever you've got. So you can see how the sides, you've got this full block on one and then half of them on the other. And I'll show you exactly what I mean by the bottom, wanting to have it, and you can kind of see where I pulled it off the long arm to then do the domestic, just because it's slightly different textures and, you know, the tension is a little bit different. But I mean, I need to block this quilt so it lays a little more flat. And I did change thread color for all of these colors. So each color, you can see the green and the blue have different threads, as does the brown and yellow in this case. All different thread colors, because it was important to me that it really accentuate the colors and not get in the way of it. So you can see here close up too in the middle. And here's a look at the back. This might be one of the most expensive backs I have ever put on a quilt, because it is entirely Liberty of London on the back. I'm not a huge fan of pieced backs. That's just my personal preference. I like my backs, and this one is pieced technically, but I like them to look kind of uniform and not detract from the front. I want the front to be the focus. So as such, I really like to put one fabric on the back, and you can really see the changes in thread color here. So the background is one color and each block has some different color. All right, I hope you guys really enjoyed that, and I hope you're going to like this series where I just talk about the quilts. And I welcome you to post comments down below about the quilt itself or my quilting techniques. I paper pieced these blocks, which you're gonna find is a very common recurring theme for me, because I love to paper piece. I love the precision it gives, and it was a design that I created. I might come up with a pattern for it soon enough. We'll see if I have time to do that, because life is crazy. For piecing, I always use Aurifil thread 50 weight, just so it lays nice and flat. And then for the machine quilting, I like to use Sew Fine number 50 weight as well from Superior Threads. That works best on my long arm, and I had all the colors to go with the top. So that's what I use for materials. Batting is going to be I'm gonna guess, I know it's Quilter's Dream. And based on the drape, I think this is a Cotton Select. It is either Cotton Select or Orient. It's one of those two. I have both rolls of batting, so I find I love the Quilter's Dream batting so much. It just works really well, again, with my machines. I can get it at a reasonable price for a roll of batting at my local quilt store, and I just really enjoy working with it. The binding is a Cotton Couture Michael Miller solid in brown that I thought would complement in case any of it could peek through the chambray and the back. So I wanted that to look nice, and I did face that so that it really didn't detract from the front of the quilt. I think if I had more of the chambray, if I knew where it went, that's what I would have put on the front to do I don't want to say traditional binding, but do that kind of binding. Otherwise, I stuck with the face to really let the quilting, the pattern really be the feature of it. And I think that's what I love about face bindings. So thank you so much for joining me today as I talked about this particular quilt, A Liberty of Love. I hope you stick around. Definitely give this a thumbs up, subscribe to see more of what I have going on, quilting, crafting, soap making, who knows? I don't even know. Who knows? But I hope this inspired you to get out there, create something beautiful. Until next time, Have a fantastic day.